Namaskar, everyone. I welcome all of you to the second episode of this channel on Hindu wisdom. Here we will look at the 10 Upanishads at the head of the list of 108 Upanishads. The focus is on the learnings from the top 10 Upanishads, but in this episode we will look at only 5. The other 5 will be covered in the next part because the episode will become too long if we try to cover everything at once. Today, everyone is so busy. Either the young people are studying in school and college to prepare for future, or the adults are busy earning their livelihood. So either they have no time at all, or they have very little time to study the Upanishads. But the Upanishadic wisdom is so practical and profound that we should not miss out on it. Therefore, the aim of this episode is to make the information simple, accessible, and relevant. The mission of this channel is to promote Indian cultural and spiritual knowledge, or to simplify ancient wisdom to bring to everyone in an approachable way. I request you all to subscribe and to hit the bell icon to stay connected. So let us dive in. What actually are the Upanishads? Upanishads are the conversations on spiritual topics. These are done between two people, one who knows, who is in the position of a guru, and one who is inquiring with a wish to learn, who is in the position of a shishya. In our Ved, we have 4 Veds, but inside each Ved, there are multiple texts organized into 4 parts. The first part is the Samhitas, which are verses of worship to nature and to deities like Indra, Agni, etc. Then the next part is Brahmanas, which are useful in the family life. That is, process about how to do the rituals. Next come the Aranaks, which are discussions on philosophy, which a person pursues when he is a middle-aged person. And Upanishads come at the completion stage, which are dialogues on spiritual wisdom. So as we see, Upanishads are the final stages of the Veda. They are the spiritual conversations. They are the completion or the culmination of the Veda knowledge. They are also called as the Vedanta for this reason. Where to read this? I am putting some links here for quick reference, but if you need more links, you can go to episode 1 and refer that. These links which are here, I'll be pasting in the description of this video also, so that you can easily access these. There are so many Upanishads, the exact number is not even known. But some scholars claim that there are more than 350 Upanishads. Traditionally, 108 are very widely accepted. But how were these 108 chosen? Who made the criteria? Who made the list? The answer is in the Muktika Upanishad, which is the 108th in the list. It is a dialogue between Lord Ram and his Bhakta Sri Hanuman. It contains a structured list of all the Upanishads. It enlists the top 108 among them in rank order. What this means? This means that Lord Ram had guided Bhakta Hanuman, and this ancient knowledge is preserved for us. In this episode, as I said, we will be covering the 5, and in the next episode, we will cover the remaining 5. But please note that the coverage is not in the order listed in the list. So let us begin. The first 5, we will start with the Mundak Upanishad. The Mundak Upanishad is also called as the Mundagopanishad. It comes from the Atharva Veda. It features Sri Shaunakji, who is a family person, inquiring to Rishi Angiras regarding knowledge. It's a dialogue on the nature of knowledge itself, and it leads to deeper truth. Shaunakji asks about supreme knowledge. He wants to know that one truth which will reveal everything. This represents a normal human quest for understanding the universe. The Rishi replies that there are 2 kinds of knowledge. One is Apara Vidya, which is the lower level of knowledge, which is the worldly knowledge. And the other is the Para Vidya, which is a higher knowledge leading to liberation. Both of these will serve their own different purposes. The knowledge of science, economics, commerce, even rituals for day-to-day life, which we learn for living a happy life, for getting comfort in life, for earning our livelihood. They will lead to skill. They are not for spirituality. They are all under Apara Vidya. They will give us a comfortable life, but they will not free us from fear, anxiety, loneliness. They are bound to this life cycle only. If we are ever reborn, we will again have to start from ABCD. Paravidya, Aparavidya. So, Aparavidya is often driven by either ego or ambitions, whereas Paravidya is based on inner surrender, inner search. Paravidya reveals the eternal or the self or the Brahman to us. It frees us from the fear of death, from the fear of pain, from the fear of suffering. The message is there are both types of knowledge and both should be pursued, but in pursuing the materialistic worldly knowledge, we should not neglect our inner growth. We should know the difference between the means and the end. To move towards Paravidya, we should do at least one selfless act every day. Maybe put some grains to the birds, maybe water a plant, etc. But we should not have an expectation in return of that particular work. For example, I am watering my potted plant and I want my neighbors to praise me how beautiful my plants are. Then it is not selfless. It is a good work. It's no doubt it's a good thing to water your plants, but it is not apara. It is not para anymore. This kind of behavior aligns us towards achieving paravidya. So, in summary, knowledge is worldly and spiritual. Both kinds are important. None of them is ignorable. And Rishi Angiras urges us to keep balance between both types. Next, we move on to the next Upanishad, which is the Prashna Upanishad. Here, 6 disciples come and approach Rishi Pipalada with 6 profound questions. They want to ask questions on so many profound things. They want spiritual insights from him. But Rishi replies that you must live with me for at least 1 year first. Only after you live with me 1 year, after that you can start asking your questions. If at that time, if I know those answers, I will be able to share those answers. So the questions are not even started yet, but the learning has already started. The first learning is patience. We have to wait patiently to get responses. We should not run after answers alone. And the second learning is staying near learned and knowledgeable people will automatically elevate us. Staying in such environments will foster inner growth. Basic small questions will answer themselves when we stay with such people. Living among such seekers will trigger deeper inquiring from within. So Pipalad openly says, I may not know the answers. This is the third lesson which says Nir Ahankar. We should not be proud. We should not be egoistic. We should be able to say that I may not know. So great wisdom is rooted in humility. So we should seek environments to encourage inner growth. We should be patient and wait for answers, not demand them. And we should respect people who are humbly guiding us. We should understand that wisdom takes time and effort, both. It's not a 2 minutes noodle kind of thing. Then we should be near the people who elevate us. Third is humility builds trust. Learning is much more important than the getting the answers themselves. It's not an answer key. The process of learning is important. We move on to the next Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad. That is centering around a boy named as Nachiketa. It is a dialogue between Nachiketa and Yamraj. It explores the concepts of life, death, and the path of truth. Once a little boy, Nachiketa, sees his father doing a yajna. After the yajna, he starts donation. And he starts donating old and useless cows who do not give any milk now. Nachiketa realizes that this is not charity, this is hypocrisy. He confronts his father very politely, but honestly confronts his father, asking that this is not what you are supposed to be doing. He challenges the shallow rituals. He raises concern where he feels that the intention is not good. He raises his concern. So this shows the importance of purity in action as well as the willingness to raise concerns where required. His father gets angry. When Nachiketa keeps asking, who will you dominate me to? His angry father says, I will give you to death. And Nachiketa accepts this very calmly. He doesn't get angry or upset. And he begins a new spiritual journey to meet death in the form of Yamraj. Obviously, his father starts repenting, but the boy has already begun his journey. When he reaches Yamraj's abode, Yamraj is not in his abode. So Nachiketa very patiently waits for him to return for 3 days. When he returns, he is very impressed by his patience and Yamraj grants him 3 boons. Here begins the spiritual dialogue. The first he asks is peace with my father. When I go back to my father, I want everything to be as it was before. We should be as loving. I do not want my father to be regretful. I do not want to punish my father. I want peace. The second he asks is knowledge about the sacred fire rituals. The third he asks is what will happen after death? What is the reality behind it? Yamraj tries to avoid this question. 3 or 4 times he tries to tempt the boy towards other directions, but Nachiketa remains very firm in his questions. He says, you are the Lord of death. If you will not answer me, there is no other place I can get this answer. So he is very firm, and then Yamraj starts explaining things to him. One of the concepts Yamraj says is, you will often face 2 choices in life. One will be prayer, which will please your senses at that time. The other will be shreya, which will be good for the soul, which will be good. Yamraj advises him, always choose shreya over prayer. For example, a prime minister of a country may face choices between popularity and duty. The option which wins him votes may not be good for the country. But a true leader has to very carefully think what is good for the nation, and he should choose always shreya over prayer. Learnings from this, first, we should be able to question when we see false traditions and superficial acts, we should be able to question. Second, we should be able to face fear and uncertainty with calmness. We should seek what is good. We should not just go after what is pleasant for the moment. And we should not be vengeful. We should stand up for the truth, be fearless, choose shreya over prayer, and spiritual maturity has nothing to do with age. That was a small child who went after such information. Next, we come to the Kena Upanishad. Kena word in Sanskrit means by whom. Who is the enabler? Who enables the whole world? This comes from the Samaveda and it explores the nature of the Brahman through questions and answers. The essence of Brahman. Brahman is not what we see, what will we ever be able to see, but it is what actually enables the sense of sight. We have the eye, we see through our eyes. We all know this. But if the person dies, the eye will not be able to see anymore. Is the eye dead? No, eye is still living. You and I all know that the eye can be transplanted by a surgeon to another blind person and he starts seeing. That means the eye was alive. Eye was not dead. But the person who was enabling the sight from that eye has left the body. So the enabler who enables sight is the Brahman. Similarly, you cannot think about Brahman and know him because he cannot be thought of. He is the one who enables the process of thought. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, Achintyo ayam. You cannot think about it and find it. The invisible source behind all the faculties of living organisms is the Brahman. In modern world, we equate ourselves with our body. People work towards the happiness of the body alone. But Kena Upanishad teaches we are beyond the body. Chasing only bodily pleasure will lead to sorrow. There is no end to physical desires. We will never get happiness. Slavery of the body will limit our spiritual growth. Mastery of the body, controlling the desires of the body, is the key to success. We should not be controlled by the body. We should control our body. We should not be controlled by our senses. We should control our senses. We should recognize ourselves as a master of all the senses. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, the senses are like 5 horses and the charioteer controls the horses. That is a different topic. I will not divert now. But the freedom from the demands of the body will lead us to freedom from sorrow. Next, we come to the Isha Upanishad or the Ishopanishad. The first Upanishad in the list of 108 is the Isha Upanishad. It is very highly revered. It has a huge depth and brevity. It was revered by Mahatma Gandhi, who once said, if only Ishopanishad survives, everything else is burnt down. Sanatan Dharma will still live on. The concept is the root of sorrow and suffering is considering one's self as distinct and conflicted with the self of others. It discusses about Vidya and Avidya. The first verse itself is a point of debate because it Dvait opinion people interpret it in a different way, that there is a God and we should follow God, and Advait people interpret it as in a different way, that self is everything and myself is the same as yourself. The final verse declares, I am He. This itself has so many interpretations that many PhD theses can be written on this. The core teaching is there is one Isha, everything in the world belongs to that one. There is no separate self, it's only an illusion. This concept will reduce ego because I will not want to possess things. If I view things as my property, it may lead to jealousy because I own 2 houses and my neighbor owns 4 houses. I may feel jealous. But if there is one eternal self who owns everything and we are only utilizing this all facilities as his or her prasad, this will lead to contentment and this will lead to humility. This will transform our attitude from ownership to gratitude. We should not compare our wealth with others. We should avoid greed. We should avoid the tendency to hoard. We should trust our path and accept whatever comes to us with devotion. Wrapping up, in this part, we explored 5 Upanishads. The first was the Mundak Upanishad, where Shaunakji approaches the spiritual guru, asking him about the nature of knowledge. The guru explains that there are 2 kinds of knowledge, apara and para. The second was the Prashna Upanishad, where 6 disciples approach Pipaladji with 6 very profound questions. But Pipaladji says, be patient and wait for 1 year. After 1 year, you can ask me, and at that time, if I know the answers, I will give you the answers. The third is the Katha Upanishad, which is the dialogue between Yamraj and Nachiketa. It considers great profound questions. The fourth is the Kena Upanishad. The Kena Upanishad talks about the Brahman as the one who enables all organisms to live in this world. The life enabler is the Brahman. The fifth is the Isha Upanishad, which talks that there is only one true Isha or self. There is no other. And everything we are utilizing in this world belongs to that Isha alone, and we are only utilizing it for the time being, and all the different selves belong to one Isha only. Each of these holds a unique learning for life. In the next part, we will explore the next 5 Upanishads, that is the Taittiriya Upanishad, Aitareya Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and the Mandukya Upanishad. Later on in this channel, we will try to do separate episodes on each of these, but this video is only for an overview of all this. If you have enjoyed this, please like and share and subscribe to this channel. Please press the bell icon to be able to receive updates and help us to spread the wisdom of Sanatan Dharma. Till we meet again, Jai Shri Sitaram, Jai Shri Radha Krishna.